Hi there, my name is John Stevens, pastor of Zion Lutheran Church in Oregon City, Oregon, and we're part of the ELCA. And this is Dollar Store Children's Sermons, where we normally take an item from the Dollar Tree and we tie them to the lectionary text, whether that be the Revised Common Lectionary or the Narrative Lectionary. And we are in the Narrative Lectionary, and we're in the summer, so there's a couple of different options that we can do. And this video is for the Spill the Beans summer pack, where they're giving it away for free. Seven Sundays of ideas, and it's all around the theme of the genius of Jesus. And so putting together 7 children's sermons that you can use, springboards for ideas that you might be able to use for yourself using the theme that Spill the Beans has put out. And so this video is going to cover all 7 of them. We're just going to go from the beginning to the end, and we'll see how many times it takes me to actually video it. So we're going to start off with week 1, which is the genius of Jesus, encouraging potential. Now, some of these ideas you might have seen in another Dollar Store Children's Sermon video used in a different way, but anyway, they work. And so the encouraging potential, and it's the calling of the disciples, and looking at calling of the fishermen, how they were seen as the lowest of lows, or pretty low on the totem pole of in society, and how Jesus sees something in them and calls them to be part of the greater mission, and that the genius of Jesus is seeing the potential in us. And so the item I am using used these felt pieces of paper for felt craft things from the Dollar Tree. You can use a regular piece of paper. It works best if you have 2 different colors because it's easier to distinguish and they don't think you're doing something tricky. I will link the PDF that I have on the site so you can actually get the template to cut these out and use them. But so this here, so this one, let's say this is me. And when I look at people, and sometimes I see that they're longer and it looks like they're greater and I'm shorter and I don't have all the stuff that I need for this world in which Jesus might want to use or God calls me to use. But the thing is when you're talking to someone else, they actually think the same thing. They think that they might not have all the potential, that they don't have the stuff that it takes for them to follow Jesus. And if you reversed it again, they would think that I would think that they have all the stuff and I don't have the stuff. But the fact is that God gifts us with potential. God gives us gifts and sees something in us that is so important, because the fact is that when we put these together, they're the exact same size, and that Jesus sees us as the same. They are exactly the same size. And Jesus sees you and I as people of God, created with the same potential, with the same wonder, the same gifts, different gifts, but the same ways that we can reach out and in God's glory and God's kingdom, that Jesus sees something in us. So that is, it's optical illusion. It's the boomerang illusion. I love it, and it's truly an optical illusion. Holding it there and holding it here, it looks like one's smaller than the other. I will give the template so you can cut these out and use them. Have had great success with these. So anyway, that's for the first one. That's week 1. The genius of Jesus is that he sees our potential and encourages it and calls us out as people of God. All right. So week 2 is out of Luke 16, and it's the genius of Jesus balancing power. And so there's 2 things I'm looking at. And again, this is all springboard to get you thinking in a direction or not. Use them. I hope that they can help you. The first one that I'm looking at is a level, right? A balance, actually, with the balance bubble, and that what happens when if you're like hanging a picture and you get out of balance, what happens to the picture? It's not straight, it's crooked. Or if you have a shelf and you're going to put up a shelf and you're out of balance, things can slide off. And when we get out of balance, things can happen, and you can work with that. But that Jesus helps us to bring our life back into balance, and that when that happens, we're balanced. Anyway, looking at that complete springboard. The one looking at that, the second one I'm looking at is, 1 second. Not coffee, but I need it. I'm looking at garage sale stickers. The text that we're using here is about, we've got the rich man and Lazarus, and we have the this unjust steward. We've got these using out of balance in money, and about when we get out of balance with the things in our life. And so I've used this before. You could look up the video, but you don't need to. If you go to the Dollar Tree or actually any store and you get garage sale stickers, you get ones that have their packet, and they've got $1, they've got 50 cents, they got 20 cents, they got 10 cents, and then they have a sticker that says make an offer. And so when I'm doing this one, I've got the stickers, and as I'm talking about how I'm so happy that I'm going to have a garage sale, and I start putting these stickers on my body. I put them here, I put them here, I put them here, put them everywhere. And the idea is that this is supposed to look cool. That I love these stickers, and I love the money, and it's almost like you could even put them on your ears as earrings, and that the idea is it looks ridiculous, it looks crazy, it looks ridiculous, and about how this is the most important thing, these things, and then you can come to that sticker that says make an offer. And that's where things start to go back into balance, because ultimately Jesus made the offer for us. That Jesus, the genius of Jesus is that he brings our lives back into balance. He gives us that balance through the grace of God, through the cross, through the empty tomb, and reclaims us as people and brings us back into an orientation that, I wouldn't use that word with kids, but the idea of the back into balance. You could also use a scale if you wanted to with a balance. You could make a scale and have the balance. But the idea that when you get out of balance, so either this balance or the stickers, that's just, it's a ridiculous image, and it helps in the sense that you can talk about the kids about it. So what's going on? What's so silly about this? And there we go. So that's so week 1 we have encouraging potential. Week 2, balance of power, and week 3 is promoting peace. And so this one here, we're going to take a step out, and we're going to go down into the inner sanctum of the church, which is also known as the church kitchen. And we're going to take a look at the one I'm thinking about for this one, week 3, promoting peace. We have the bowl of water here, which is going to represent our life and the things that, it's just our life in general. And we're down here in the secret lair of the church, otherwise known as the church basement. And so we've got the bowl of water, and what's going to play the part of the stuff coming into our lives, or the hard things, or the violence, and because this is all about the peace of Jesus, is this pepper. And the reason we're using pepper is it's easier to be seen in the water. If I put salt in there, you wouldn't be able to see it, but pepper, you can see it float on the top. And so things come into our lives, and there are lives like that. You can see all kinds of stuff, and it gets really hard as it comes into our lives. But Jesus comes to bring peace into our lives and help us sort out the things that cause us violence, and as we fight with one another, helps us figure out how to be at peace with one another. And so we've got this Lutheran Brotherhood pencil is going to play the part of Jesus, and as Jesus comes into our lives, in the center, you'll see here all of the things that make us confused, that we fight over, and things like that. When Jesus comes into the center of our lives, all the other things go out into the parts that really, and almost out there. They're still there, because a lot of times there's still conflict and things like that. But Jesus helps us manage that and helps us figure that out. All right, we're back up from the secret lair, back into the office, and so that I'm using for that one a bowl, a pencil, and a pepper, and some water in the bowl. It's an old magic trick, old science magic trick, where you are breaking the tension of the water, and the tension of the water when you break it, it pulls the pepper all the way to the side. You use pepper because it floats on water. Salt would just sink. But I use the idea that I'm using pepper because you can see it. I use the pencil because I can coat the pencil with Dawn or some dish detergent beforehand, and I don't have to worry about trying to figure out how to get it on the finger. You could use a finger and you could touch it, and you could talk about that as God comes to us, or as Jesus comes to us and touches things, whatever. But I use this because it's just easier, and the idea that comes in, and all the things that cloud us, all the things that are all the chaos and all that, it makes sense, and Jesus helps us with that in our life. So it's a springboard. You can come up with some better words on it, but I tell you, it's fantastic. Kids and adults alike see it, and they go, wow, because it's pretty neat. And even if an adult remembers seeing it as a kid, or even that, it's still a neat thing. So that's what we would use for that one. So the next one is week 4. I want to get back up here so I can make sure we're on there. Yeah, week 4, which is the genius of Jesus is crossing lines, and we're looking at Luke 13 verses 10 to 17. Chapter 13, 10 to 17. And I am using 2 pieces of string, and it's all about crossing lines, so this works out well for the line, but we got the 2 pieces of string, and the thing is that Jesus heals this woman on the Sabbath. He crosses a line. He sees her as a human being, and that's more important. And the fact is that we've got so many things in our lives that we draw lines about. And it can be the color of someone's skin. It could be someone's sexual orientation. It could be, there's so many things. You could talk about someone who is playing basketball and is my height, 5'5", or someone who's 6 foot. There's that line, that things like that. But there's so many ways that we draw lines, and we see each other as separate people, that we see each other as that person's over there, we draw a line, and over here, and I don't want anything to do with them. But Jesus crosses lines, and when Jesus crosses those lines, what ends up happening is that we stop seeing each other as separate, we stop seeing each other as us and them, and we start seeing it as we, and as we come together, we find out that we are actually one, and there isn't any separation between you and I, that in God's eyes we are one. So that's the idea that I'm using, and it's what you need from the Dollar Tree is you need some twine, which is in their automotive tool section, and you need twine because this is actually like 5 strings wrapped up in one. And what you do is you'll take and you'll pull off. You'll pull out like this. So I'm going to pull out like this some string, and you twist this one, and you twist this one like this, and they almost like to go in a certain direction. And now, as these are twisted, it looks like, and what I do is I hold it here, and then I pull one off like this so they can see that it's 2. I mean, the fact is that even up close, it looks like 2 that are just together, that are just stuck together. But if you hold it there, and you hold it there, and it's 2. And then all I do is I move it over into the hand, move it behind the hand, and just kind of pull it up, and that pulls it back together. And about the 2 becomes 1. The lines that we draw, the separations that we make, Jesus steps over them and then removes them, and then we see each other as all together one body of God and body of Christ. So there we are. So we use that, and that is for Jesus crossing the line. All right, so we're looking at week 5, which is the genius of Jesus, showing the sacred, as we read Luke 15, verses 11 through 32, as Jesus tells the parable of the prodigal son or the faithful father, and as really looks at God in a whole different way, as people are looking at God as perhaps this father that runs to the son, that is completely forgiving. We've got the older brother that's grumbling, and we've got the son that's beating the prodigal son that doesn't even have a chance to ask for forgiveness, and all this stuff going on. And that people are looking at what Jesus is saying, and he's kind of cracking open this whole new understanding of God, and he's showing the sacred in a different way. And the item I'm using, this is again a springboard where I'm just trying to figure this out, but the item I'm using is actually a magnifying glass. It's at the Dollar Tree, and it's part of their backyard travels. And it's a magnifying glass with a pair of tweezers, and it's got, you can, I dropped the pair of tweezers, but you can keep bugs in here if you want. There's a little couple of air holes, but the idea of examining something we thought we knew well, examining the backyard that we thought we knew well, and looking at the different things, you know, and examining them and looking at them close, and seeing that in the backyard or the park or somewhere that there is so much more there that is left to explore and left to see. And then in this parable, Jesus is showing people a God that they might not have known, probably didn't know, showing us a God that is that shows us that the sacred is alongside with us, and it's just a fantastic way. And so I'm using this to look at the thing that sometimes God surprises us, and we see God in a new way, that we might see Christ in our neighbor in a new way, that we might see God active in this community we call the church in a new way, that God, through Jesus Christ, shows us the sacred. So that is the direction I am taking on that one. All right, for this next one, which is week 6, the genius of Jesus holding heaven, Matthew 13 verses 24 through 35. We're looking at how Jesus tells they're the kingdom parables about the kingdom of heaven is like the seed, that there was weeds and regular wheat growing up next to each other, and then there was the other one about the parable of the mustard seed, and then the one where the woman is working the yeast through the dough as it goes all the way through, and that Spill the Beans Pack points out that Jesus seems to be moving this idea of heaven from being up out there to in our midst. And so there's a couple of different items that I'm looking at. One is a lot of the Dollar Trees have play gardening tools that you can use that as a visual image, so you could possibly use that. You could use a packet of seeds, or you can cut up an apple and use those apple seeds, and talk about, with the apple seeds, you plant them and you water them, and that this idea of caring for the earth and caring for one another, and about how there's sometimes that you got to be patient, that things don't happen just like that, with that wheat and the weeds, that God says as we see that happening, there are times where we just have to wait. And then there's this idea of potential, too, where I'm looking at it, where God is doing something with you and I that we might not be able to see, and that God wants something from us that we might not think that we have, that potential. And so another item that I looked at, and this is one of those springboard ones I might use, I might not, but I like it because it's quirky, and it's one of those magic towels. This is pretty cool because it's Scooby-Doo, but it's a magic towel, and what I like about that is when you look at this, it looks like this is nothing. This doesn't look that great. It doesn't, it's compact, it's whatever. But when you put it in the water, it expands, and it's much bigger, and it's much more usable, and there's something you can do with it. And I like the idea that it happens with water, this sense of tying it back into baptism, and that when God claims us in the waters of baptism, God claims us for God's purpose in the world, and that God wants to use us, and that God gifts us, and that God claims us as God's children. And so that's where this quirkiness comes from. That there's this and the thing is that even though God is active right away, sometimes we don't see it right away, and sometimes we wonder what God is up to, but we trust that God is a faithful God. And in the kingdom parables, where the smallest of seeds as it grows big, or the weeds in the wheat, God is up to something, and and God asks us to take part in it, and sometimes it's difficult because we don't see it right away. So this is what I'm looking at. This is where I'm going with. So again, another springboard for the for your thought. Now, the next one for week 7, the genius of Jesus, inviting action. It's out of John chapter 4, verses 4 to 42. And this is the woman at the well, where Jesus comes in and traveling through Samaria, and he stops at the well and has this conversation. This idea that the genius of Jesus is that Jesus invites us to respond, invites us to do something. So the item I am using is an invitation. It's an invitation, and now this one happens to be a special invitation, and it's a cross, so it could be a baptism, a confirmation, but it's an invitation that you are being invited. And the thing about being invited, when you get an invitation, is that you're expected, you're letting them know that you're going to come or not, but you're being invited to do something. You're being invited to attend a party. You're being invited to respond. And when Jesus invites us, or when Jesus says to the woman, and he invites, and there's this expectation of some type of response, which is great because Jesus doesn't want us just to sit there. And what a wonderful gift, being clear that us responding or not doesn't lessen Jesus' love of us. That it doesn't lessen that. That's not what makes Jesus love us. He invites us because he loves us, and then we get a chance to respond. So I'm using the invitation for this one, that Jesus invites us into this and invites us to respond out of love and as we meet the people around us. So, all right, so that is the 7th Sunday in the series of The Genius of Jesus. All of these are springboard. Put them together. I wanted to get this out so that you'd have some ideas to go on. Some of them are rougher than others, but maybe it'll get you thinking in that direction that you would like to go with this. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for Spill the Beans for putting out that pack and making it free. That's a pretty cool thing. I like that. And as always, have a blessed week and a blessed summer series as you walk through this. Thanks.